Ladies and gentlemen, it is us from the Geekiverse. It is I, Seth. It is her, Maggie. And it is him, Josiah. And we are here at an exciting time because in the midst of Star Wars Celebration Orlando, we finally have the first trailer for Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi.
Woo! Sorry, I've been holding that in for a long time.
It's all happening so fast.
So we've been watching this all day. We've been following it. We've been looking at it. We've been analyzing it. We love this trailer so much. So, without further ado, let's get into it. So this is a striking but misleading opening shot. A field of stars, perhaps, but...
Or October.
Wrong.
No, and then not. So, my thought here, we see Rey fly out of what seems like a cave. My first inkling is she's gone through something that similar to what Luke went through in Empire on Dagobah.
Hopefully
the cave.
Less weird and
I hope just as
confusing
weird.
and just completely leaving you with a what?
I'm hoping for that. I'm hoping it's
That
more
was
experimental and
weird.
But there's just so much to draw from that, and that's just it is kind of weird, and that's kind of like what makes it intimidating.
Now, let me say, this very first visual that we have, you can tell already a lot of things about this film. It seems like it's dark. How about how it looks? It totally looks different from Force Awakens already to me, in terms of how it was shot.
So it does look different. You know, it's more of an kind of angled shot. But I was actually going to say this actually does resemble Force Awakens to me in the opening shot of the Force Awakens teaser, which was Finn having a shot kind of similar to this, where you're so it's kind of similar, but it's shot differently. So I think I feel like this overall this trailer has the same kind of format. It's put in the same mold as the Force Awakens teaser, but it is, it's filled with things that are indicative of what this movie will be like, which is very different from Force Awakens.
It totally does.
Yeah.
And I think what I mean by that is this movie already feels like it's got its own flavor, its own distinct look and feel, even though it connects very well to Force Awakens. But
yeah, I agree.
We'll see as the trailer goes on here.
Yes.
So, in a few seconds here, you'll hear Luke say, breathe, and I thought that was kind of ironic because of his lineage with Darth Vader. I don't know, maybe I'm looking a little too much into that. But
so we have
that,
the island in Scotland, I believe, or Ireland, Skellig Michael, which is where they filmed at the end of Force Awakens, and
that was actually,
just breathe.
As Mark Hamill says, a monastery, or a retreat for Christians, in the early centuries following Jesus Christ's time, which I think is super interesting.
Yeah.
And only so many people can be on this island at a time.
Yeah.
There's all these restrictions for them to be there, and it's
They're but it's Star Wars, so
that's
you'll
a
let
place
us be here.
I would want to visit for a number of reasons.
Yeah.
I think it's striking. It looks beautiful. It seems like a decent chunk of the film may take place here.
At least the first act, probably, with
Sure.
Rey and Luke. And, and it's the location, for what we understand, it's the location of the first Jedi Temple, which is why Luke is there. So,
I think it looks, like I said, striking, and I think a little bit it plays off of what Dagobah was for Luke and Yoda back in Empire.
Absolutely.
A retreat for one of them, like
it's
Yoda.
so remote.
Yeah.
And that they can legitimately be completely away from everything else that's going on.
Exactly.
And
it was in
so
uncharted
far
space.
away.
People had no idea where Luke was because he wasn't in anywhere uncharted space. That's where this place was. This shot here is this almost reminds me of like a samurai film, and samurai films are one of the big inspirations for the original Star Wars in '77, and just the way. Just her stance and her dress, her hair kind of put up. It kind of looks like a top knot that a samurai would have. It's just a little thing. I don't know if it's intentional, but I thought that was cool.
I don't think anything's arbitrary. It probably
Every word and everything in Star Wars seems planned.
And this is beautiful. Very reminiscent of Man of Steel. Zack Snyder, Man of Steel. When he's first learning to fly, and this is Rey presumably beginning to learn the Force, how to use the Force, much like Luke did on Dagobah with lifting huge boulders and everything, and it's, kind of a different approach to it, but
I see that.
Beautiful display.
I know we've both got things to say here as we see General Leia.
Yes.
Now, of note, Rey's theme is playing there.
Yes, Rey's theme is throughout the trailer. But
As they mentioned the light.
at this kind of this war room situation as well. I thought possibly Billy Lord's character and Admiral Akbar may have been there. It's tough to see, but
I couldn't tell. I looked and I froze that and I wasn't seeing it.
yeah.
But
anyway, for each of these parts, when Luke asks Rey what she sees, and here she says the light, and you can faintly hear audio of Leia from A New Hope saying, "Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi."
Okay,
You can
I'm
faintly
glad I
hear that in
didn't
the
imagine
background.
that.
Yeah, each one of these little bits has something in the background whenever
Yeah.
she says something. For here
Which
for the
is
light,
so cool.
"Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi," and darkness. Now this is, I believe, is Kylo Ren's smashed helmet, correct?
no,
No, it's,
that is Darth Vader's.
Are you sure? That looks like the silver.
Well, then you hear.
You hear
I-
the breathing, but
I
But
believe
that's
that's
Kylo.
Vader's. Only okay, so it's tough to see, but
look at the silver frame. That's definitely Kylo's.
no, I think that's the burnt part. I thought. My thought here, and that's definitely possible. He's long been rumored to have a new mask in this movie, like a different kind of mask. So I was thinking this, and it's super hard to tell, and they know that it is because we're talking about it, right?
Yeah.
So like, they're so good. They're so good.
hate them.
I know.
And if it is Kylo, I think it's Kylo's helmet, whether or not it is, But if it is his, I was interpreting that as possibly a sign that he might be giving up the desire to impersonate and live up to Darth Vader, and he's going to start to be his own thing, and that's going to be part of his arc.
That could make sense.
Because the
Yeah.
reason he wears the mask is to be like Darth Vader, because he doesn't need it. So if it was Kylo Ren's mask, that's something I interpreted from it.
And Snoke talks a lot about, if you've read the novelization of the film or even some of the now canon stuff, he always harps back that Luke's biggest weakness in getting pulled towards the light side, which is weird, pulled towards the light, which
I
has always
love
been the
that.
opposite,
Yes.
is that he had compassion or Vader had compassion for Luke, or Luke had compassion for Vader.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that's him saying, okay, see you, Grandpa. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
I'm going to be full out dark side.
Yeah.
So that's another reason I kind of think that that's Vader's. But I like that we've both got supporting arguments for either side.
Yeah. We basically say his arc might be similar. Also, the audio in the background of this clip is Obi-Wan Kenobi saying, "Seduced by the dark side," when he's telling Luke about what happened with Anakin. So that's the audio playing for this clip when Rey is saying,
Listen
he sees
back.
darkness,
Listen back.
and
Yeah,
here.
'cause I missed that the first time I watched.
So this is, I believe this might be on Octo. This might be like a little Force library of Luke's.
I think so too.
Yeah, and if we go in a bit closer here, we'll see. So that's the symbol of the old Jedi Order, with a gloved hand, an unidentified gloved hand belonging to an unidentified gloved person
Who is wearing
inspecting
gloves?
it.
At least one glove we know.
Yeah.
But I think, that is the logo for the film that they released today. Correct? For the main trailer or
It
the
is-
main poster?
Good point. Yeah, that this is kind of that's the kind of the graphic, the stylized graphic for Rey igniting the lightsaber on the teaser poster for The Last Jedi. You can make a lot of kind of inferences as to just what this book might be, whose it was. Could it have belonged to an old Jedi Master? Maybe it looks like there's kind of this red writing along the top that wasn't there originally.
Like he was taking notes as he thought of things, or someone
Possibly,
else, or
yeah.
people have been adding to it.
Yeah, and one theory I'd read online, which is a really interesting thing, is maybe this is the Journal of the Wills. So the Journal of the Wills, for anyone that doesn't know, was kind of one of the original when Lucas was coming up with the concept of Star Wars. Back when it was Star Wars, before it was Star Wars, it was Journal of the Wills, The Adventures of Luke Starkiller. When it was
Thank
very
God.
much in its infancy. So that was always like an old term used to associate, just like, big Star Wars fans knew of it. It was never in the movies, but they brought that back in Rogue One because Baze Malbus and Chirrut Imwe were former Guardians of the Wills, and that was really exciting to hear that term And, you know, the Journal of the Wills was supposedly a book, you know, about, you know, the Force and the old thing. So maybe if they still want to incorporate the Wills into it, maybe this is the Journal of the Wills, and that would be really interesting. But either way, it seems to be an old Jedi Order book from this old Jedi Order temple. And the audio in the background of this is Yoda saying, talking about the Force, saying it surrounds us and it binds us. So that's what's playing during this clip. So I feel like throughout all of these,
this shot here
the shot is incredible.
It's spectacular.
Excuse me.
It makes me question a few things, and not about Rey, but, and I know we talked about it kind of pre-show here. Does Luke not have a lightsaber anymore? Does he not have that green lightsaber anymore?
It's not in this trailer at all.
He does.
Because in canon now, he does still have that. Only a little bit of time after Return of the Jedi
it's
passes.
not lost.
Correct, and he's got it in his possession. Because if you remember, end of Return of the Jedi, he tosses it away.
Mm-hmm.
So you know, I assume he picks it up just before he leaves. He must have, because in some of the Marvel comics that they've released, he's got it. He's got it again.
Okay.
As he's in search of Octo.
Yeah. So, it's possible if he is like the analog of Yoda in some way of this, that he won't do it. He'll just rely sheerly on the Force, and he won't have a lightsaber at all. It's very possible.
I want to see that green lightsaber so bad.
Me too. I do love that green lightsaber.
It was one of my favorites.
I feel like through the past couple clips of them, you know, Rey saying, "Oh, you know, the light, the dark," and recalling these old clips from the previous movies, I feel like there's an effort to kind of set up that classic definition of the Force and of the light versus the dark, reestablish that so that everything can be questioned. And I feel like that's what The Force Awakens did, and what The Last Jedi. I feel like The Force Awakens, you know, it was, you very much harken back to the dynamics of good versus evil from the original trilogy. It was starting to twist things a little bit with the pull to the light and everything like that. But as we'll go on, we'll talk more about how it seems like The Last Jedi might be ready to knock down those notions of what we think good and evil are when it comes to the Force. But
if there's one thing this trailer established today for me, it's that I thought I knew where this movie was going, and now I'm not quite sure I do at all. It seems like it's going in a completely different direction.
I'm really excited where I think it's going. One last note on this: it looks like, because that's Luke on the right, Rey on the left, and then it looks like she's training by like an old Jedi statue. Maybe it looks like a statue of a Jedi, kind of with his arms crossed.
That's what I think.
That's cool, because there's probably little monuments and things all throughout the island. And now we get a first look at a battle scene here now this is a new planet. This is
cool.
This looks very cool.
I don't understand, like, the
these seem to be some kind of like skiffs vehicles. I believe these are with the Resistance, and far in the distance you can see walkers that are presumably the First Order. From what I understand, they are nicknamed Guerrilla Walkers because of the way they're kind of like AT-ATs, but they have like a bigger, heavier front end, and it looks like their kind of legs are a little bit apart further than AT-ATs would be. So it looks like if the rumors are true, then that might be what those are. But they're on a planet that so these skiffs are kind of skidding along the ground and digging up this like red sand.
I don't understand the topography.
No, I hate to admit this, but
it's cool. Like,
it looks like it looks like a big
striking.
It looks like Death Valley or like a big salt flat,
that looks so cool.
Like the salt flats in Africa or something like that. To say this is a unique location.
But what does this remind you a little bit of, with the walkers and everything?
Hoth. Yes.
Right.
Second movie of the trilogy. We're going there again.
Yeah.
Global warming on Hoth, and now
there you go. I personally. I like there being some parallels between the movies, because George Lucas did. That's a line that gets repeated and kind of mocked. When George Lucas said it's like poetry, it rhymes, and when people kind of make fun of some of the stuff in the prequels. But I like that, and that is a pre-established motif in these movies, that history kind of repeats itself. And some people didn't care for the way that Force Awakens did it. I personally did not have an issue with it.
It makes sense.
This is a planet called Crate, which is an uncharted planet. It's a mineral planet, so there's like old mines there, and supposedly the location of an old rebel base that's been abandoned, but it's supposedly going to play a key role in The Last Jedi. But this is beautiful. And okay, Finn Still recovering from his Kylo Ren afflicted injuries.
Interesting. This is kind of a new contraption for Star Wars that we're seeing him in.
Is this a replacement for the Back to Tank? Is
That's
the Back to Tank still around?
That's what I'm thinking a little bit. You know, we're 30 years.
Upgrade. Back to Tank 2.0.
Yeah.
Back to so primitive. No, so we're
Beta Tank.
We're 30 years out. Obviously from Return of the Jedi, so things have changed. But I mean, really, I wonder how long this is going to take. I get the feeling that Finn might be in this spot for a good chunk of the film, and maybe we do see him. There are screenshots of how we saw General Leia kind of around that war room of Finn walking around in his typical jacket that he got from Poe. So I don't know if this lasts the whole movie or not. It's interesting to see because he's certainly one of the new stars of this franchise here. That they make note of it early on in this trailer.
Well, there have been some some of the photos that Rian Johnson was sharing earlier in the panel from today showed Finn kind of up and about and doing different scenes. I believe he's supposed to have some kind of relationship with Kelly Marie Tran's character Rose. So I doubt that I think this is just for the beginning. I think he'll be up and maybe there'll be a bit of a recovery, but he'll be up and around and maybe even we'll be on some missions for the Resistance and stuff.
Maybe he'll be doing that bouncing up and down in the tube thing.
All right.
Clear.
Cameron and BB-8. Yes.
Very
favorites.
Little BB-8 this trailer.
Although I do love what Rian Johnson was saying about BB-8, that they've just like upped the physicality with him so much, and he described him as the Buster Keaton of this movie, which I love, and that's fantastic. I have an appreciation for sound film and physical comedy, so that sounds fantastic. Okay, all right. So, and they'd go into the X-Wing. That guy just can't hang on to an X-Wing. This movie takes place right after Force Awakens, and his other X-Wing just blew up, so...
Hey, Poe, we just finished this new X-Wing for you. Oh, crap, not again.
He's like Dee from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Her cars are just, just constantly getting...
Every time.
Every
car I have ever owned.
So what we know about the climate of what's going on in the galaxy right now is that after destroying, as Rian Johnson put, the seed of the Republic by destroying the Hosnian system with Starkiller Base in Force Awakens, there's kind of like a vacuum in a power vacuum starting to form in the galaxy, and the First Order is just putting the pressure on the Resistance to take advantage of this as much as possible. And that was one thing that was, I think, was not incredibly clear from the Force Awakens, is that the Republic, this important part of the Republic was kind of destroyed. And I know that was not, they didn't want to make the politics of everything really central to the plot of The Force Awakens. And I guess that's what, since Last Jedi is picking up right after Force Awakens ends, the opening crawl will probably be less about filling in the gap of what happened, because there's normally a few years between movies, and it'll be more about fleshing out what the situation is during that time. And I think that will work out well in that sense.
So essentially what it boils down to is there's no central governing body in the galaxy anymore. You've got...
It's a complete and total free-for-all.
Yes, the small
chaos.
band of the Resistance and the small band of the First Order, and it creates quite the dynamic where there's a gray area there, which maybe is a symbolic of where we're going with the Force.
That could be a big theme of what we're going here.
I've said that a million times, that the light side and the dark side, but these movies exist in the gray area in the middle.
And that's going to be, I think, a bigger focus going forward. Maggie was right. Hashtag Maggie was right.
I love that.
One last note on this shot. I think that's an A-wing on the right.
A-wing.
A.
I think you're correct.
Yeah. So, and the Falcon.
The beautiful shot of the Falcon. And so who do we think's flying it there?
It's got to be either Rey or Chewie, right?
I'm going to say it's probably Chewie, because I have a feeling that Rey and Luke are...
I think they're all together here.
Do you think,
it could be.
Do you think this is at the end, or do you think this is a battle at the beginning of the movie?
I'd say around the middle. I think that Luke and Rey are on Octo for like the first act, and then they leave after that, and they probably leave on the Falcon with Chewie.
Oh yeah,
and
I guess because she flew the Falcon.
Yeah,
there.
right.
The nostalgia that was so heavy from that Force Awakens trailer.
Rey and
that scar is not quite as big as I thought it would be.
Also
very
about
Anakin-y, though.
Yes, it looks just like this placement
is. It on the same eye?
Yes, same eye.
Yeah. I should know.
It's a little more angled, but yeah, I mean we can't quite see the rest of his face, and even on the teaser poster, you only see the left side of his face. So maybe there's more of a scar down in the lower in his face. But either way, I guess it wouldn't be that vicious. So since they have such sophisticated
I love
technology.
this character. I
Kylo
really
Ren,
do.
yes.
He's so complex. And
Yeah, I started off being so irritated with him, but then as he grew and I grew to understand him a little bit more, I realized how just multi-layered and brilliant, and I think they found something really interesting.
When he killed Han, I remember kind of telling Lauren after seeing Force Awakens the first time, like, I felt no sympathy for him. And a lot of times in Star Wars, you do feel some sort of sympathy for the villain. And I was like, I'm not feeling it.
Yeah.
And as I saw it more and as I read more, I was like, no, this guy is messed up.
Well,
I feel
talked about that a lot, is like, what was he actually feeling in that moment? Was it regret? Was he actually happy? Is he undercover? Which is another theory that... I don't think it's died yet, but that's just me.
No, it definitely hasn't.
Right. So I think that just speaks to the fact that he's a lot more complicated than at least I initially gave him credit for.
Yeah.
No,
he's not
love the character
at all.
All right. So this...
Oh, telling. Luke goes to his knees here in despair. We are pretty sure that this is the same scene, flashback, premonition, whatever it may be. From
Force back is what they call it. Yeah, that's what they like calling it. Yeah.
I thought you were joking.
No, that's what I think. Kathleen Kennedy.
Force
it's like
it back there.
It's like the vision from Force Awakens.
Sure. This is from Force Awakens. I think Luke turns and puts his hand on R2. If you remember the scene, he's looking at the flame. Presumably, that is the new Jedi Order that Luke had built up in the decades since Return of the Jedi. So it's just. It's an emotional scene, and I hope we get to see more of what actually happens here. And I know this sounds funny, but I love R2 being there with him. Just like that companionship.
Yeah.
They create such a personality with all of these droids, and it is so incredible to see.
Well, that it would be super noticeable if he wasn't there or wasn't a part of it, or if he just but he's a machine, but he's not. Like, they know.
Oh, yeah.
They know
They
what's
have
going
such
on.
heart and soul,
Even though he's
and it's
not,
incredible.
He can't speak. It's to the point that I know what he's beeping.
Sure.
I know what he's saying.
Sure.
And I'm like, am I just a loser? It's like, no, I think there's something there. And it's,
Absolutely there is.
And I think this is kind of beginning of where Luke is at now, and what we'll see towards the end of the trailer, that Luke is becoming disillusioned with the dynamics of the Force and the light versus the dark as he knew it. We've always thought of the Jedis are the good guys and the Sith are the bad guys, and in that kind of archetype about what makes a good Jedi had changed from the prequels over to the original trilogy, with Luke kind of being a new breed of Jedi that
hipster Jedi.
Isn't dogmatic, and that does express compassion, does go against the rules, and in the end of the day, that's what saved the day. That's what turned Vader back. And so this is the kind of archetype had already changed there, but here it seems like Luke was doing what he thought was the right thing here. He's going to start a new order of Jedi, and it could not have gone worse. Kylo became this powerful evil Force user, and people died, and it became this horrible, horrible thing. So,
and of note, there, his nephew.
Right.
Which
That's
like
a
and it tore their
whole
family
nother
apart.
level.
I think it's a major turning point for Luke, and just him kind of just redefining reality and the Force for him. So I can't wait to see more of that. And this, I believe, is not from the same scene. I believe it's cut to make it seem that way. I don't think this is from the same.
This probably actually goes back to the Resistance base. I feel like she's leading that charge.
Yeah, that's Phasma there.
Yep.
She scares the crap out of me.
I think that she's super intimidating.
Terrified
I
of
love the
her.
character. I mean,
Yeah.
she's kind of like the Boba Fett of his trilogy. Like, super cool. We don't know enough about him just yet.
Enough,
or her, I
just
should say.
enough to make you skeeved out every time she shows up.
Totally. And one thing that I thought was going to be kind of a subplot of this movie was that she was going to have it out big time for Finn, for embarrassing her at
Yeah.
Yeah,
Starkiller
I think she
Base.
probably will. That could be a
Real
running
salty.
rivalry throughout the movie.
Sure.
Absolutely.
So I think she's possibly going after him.
And a big space battle. We didn't see any battles quite this scale in Force Awakens.
No.
So those look like they could be.
I love the everyone in space battles, as dumb as that sounds.
I mean, Rogue One did it fantastically.
I love that.
That's one of my favorite space battles in all of the entire Star Wars
I prefer
saga.
that to being down somewhere. Like, I like this, and everyone's in their own little area and like sending people out, and then they're coming back, and then they. Akbar in his chair spinning around like a crazy person.
Actually, one thing I forgot to note here, they seem to be building up a visual dynamic of like red and orange and blue, which was a thing in Empire Strikes Back, particularly when like Vader and Luke fought in Bespin. That's kind of I think they're kind of calling upon that Empire Strikes Back color scheme a little bit.
Speaking of Best Buy, speaking of the Empire Strikes Back. And how we've talked about the parallels between the trilogies so far. This would be the first middle one of any trilogy. So you had Attack of the Clones, you had Empire, where there is like a predominant space battle, for what it's worth. In those movies, you have the ground war with the Clone Wars and Geonosis starting, and in Empire, you don't really have an all-out space battle.
There's not. There's the Millennium Falcon trying to get away from the Empire, going through the asteroid field and everything, but not a big space battle. Correct. This kind of reminds me of the medical frigates from the original trilogy. I wonder if that's a new version of them or not. Maybe not.
I did think that as well.
And and this line is everything.
So Luke's hair pulled back there.
My soul dropped into my heels.
So you said you.
I vomited projectile all over my desk. Like, needs to end.
I only know one truth. It's time for the Jedi to end.
So, lots to unpack with that sentence right there.
Yes.
Or that whole phrase. I mean,
so many thoughts and feelings, emotions.
Luke, I think not only has he seen the Jedi Order, well, he wasn't around to see it implode the first time, but he knows what happens.
Yes, he's aware of it. He was taught by original Jedi Knights, Obi-Wan and Yoda.
The worst of it.
So he sees what happened in hindsight to his dad, and
he sees like how broken Obi-Wan was
from
it. That like, wow, this literally drove this man to living in a cave alone, and here I am.
So Luke
doing the same thing.
Exactly.
He's like, apparently this is what you do when things get bad, so I'm going to try it out.
He builds it up again. It comes crashing down at the hands of his own family again. And I think at this point, he's seen it up so close and so personal, and he's thinking, this is not the way to go anymore. Right. We have to find a different solution to this, a different order, a different way of life. And I think that in its essence is the end of the Jedi, and I don't know what they'll call it after this.
I think he's probably filled with a lot of fear and shame too, because it's
guilt.
The two people that have completely destroyed it twice are his own flesh and blood.
Yes.
And he's like, first of all, how did I not, like, what did I do to kind of be spared from this fate? And then it's like
he had that compassion.
He feels a level of responsibility.
Yeah.
I think he's like emotionally exhausted, and I think you're right. I don't think it's the end of like the Jedi. It's the end of the Jedi as we know it, which has been slowly happening for a while.
There will be heroes that are Force users, but we've always taken that to mean the Jedi, and I think that'll carry on at some point. As I noted earlier, like, you know, the dogmatic Jedi evolved into Luke, whose compassion saved the day, and now it's time to look kind of beyond the molds of the good and evil and the light and the dark, because Luke has seen that reality and the Force are much more complicated than that, and you know, this whole thing of balance that's mentioned earlier in the trailer, and Rey says she sees the light and the darkness and the balance, and Luke says it's so much bigger than that. And you know, we never even really knew what balance truly was, and the prophecy
they say
from
bring
the
balance
prequels.
To the Force. It's like, so there's an even amount.
Does that mean
that
does that mean no Sith? Does that mean an equal amount of Jedi and Sith? Does that mean no Jedi or Sith? Like, we never even know. You know, there's this prophecy in the prequels that, like, we never really got context to what that prophecy was, like who wrote it and why, and what did it actually say, and is it even true? Things need to evolve. The Jedi, the Force users, things need to move forward. We need to move beyond that old view of morality and concepts of the Force. And like you said, it's going to open the floodgates, and we can't repeat the previous mistakes because there have had serious repercussions already. And I feel like I mentioned earlier, I feel like that's maybe part of why, you know, I like how The Force Awakens used so much of the tone and imagery from the original trilogy, and that was in part because of the the rhyming motif of Lucas's, in part because to remind audiences of why Star Wars is so great. But then also, it was part of the theme of that movie of the new generation trying to look back and live up to what the previous generation did. And I feel like reestablishing that classic old view of light versus dark may have been intentional in the sense that now it can be ripped down, and now we have that up again. Everyone can see it, so this movie can say no, that's actually not going to work and I feel like maybe that's part of like the right, Snoke versus Luke. Snoke appears to be a very Palpatine-like evil master, and there's a lot we don't know about his character, but maybe it isn't so much of the evil master versus the good master, but it's more about Snoke being the Palpatine-like classic, in the evil mold, he's classically villainous, versus Luke, who is his entire perspective about how that works and about what the morality is different, and maybe it's not good versus evil, it's the old archaic way of thinking versus the new progressive way of thinking. Maybe that's kind of what the Luke versus Snoke dynamic will actually be, which is...
Well, and light and dark, again, it's so black and white. Mm-hmm. So, there's obviously always going to be a right and a wrong, but there might be multiple different right things to do and maybe just one glaringly wrong thing to do. Because there's so many ways that this could go.
Yeah. And there's so many infinite shades of gray about what,
50 to be precise.
A lot more than that. Many more than that. And
51.
And, in the old EU Star Wars universe, the Grey Jedi were a thing. There was, the Jedi that didn't want to be light or dark, but kind of tried to walk the line in the middle. And I believe Bendu is a term for those teachings of
that totally makes
that
sense.
balance. Just to touch on back when the sequel trilogy was, it went through a lot of different identities over the years, back when in the late 70s and the early 80s, when Lucas evolved the idea of the Star Wars saga, when it went from being a 12-part series like a film serial to being a 9-part thing, 3 trilogies, and then several spin-offs, and then it became 6 movies, and then in later years George Lucas would say that he never had the idea for ever doing a sequel trilogy, which was not true. He did. And there are people there are people who saw notes about 12 movies that Lucas had, but there have been, just over the years, there have been little bits and pieces gleamed, and we got an idea of what a sequel trilogy might be. It would have been focused on Luke Skywalker's children, but there would have been big themes of moral and philosophical problems, and about blurring the line between good and evil and moral choices and passing on what you've learned, and it would have been much more contemplative. Like, the original trilogy was, more action, comic booky. The prequel trilogy was supposed to be kind of like theatrical and Machiavellian, which it kind of was.
It was regal the whole time. Everyone had great posture in those movies.
And I'm
not, like,
true.
For real, everyone was up.
Wooden, you might say.
Yeah.
And then the sequel trilogy was supposed to be more contemplative, and it just, when I read about, what Lucas's sequel trilogy might have been, I developed a picture in my mind that this trailer is surprisingly close to, and I know that Lucas handed in his notes for a sequel trilogy when he sold Lucasfilm to Disney, and that they said they kind of didn't go with his notes, but I'm sure they were free to use whatever ideas they wanted, and it really seems like there's something of his concept that is retained in this. I don't know that for sure. That's the sense that I get, and I like that idea, because I think George Lucas is brilliant. I think he's a genius. I don't think he necessarily should direct or write dialogue, but I think coming up with broad story concepts like he did with the original Indiana Jones movies, and kind of to an extent the original trilogy, I think that's where greatness can really happen, when his ideas are then met with collaboration from other people, like what's happening now.
I mean, yeah, I agree with that. I think Lucas, it was in one of the commentaries for, I want to say Revenge of the Sith, he said, he references a possible episode 7, and that would have been 2005 when Revenge of the Sith came out. Yeah. So it's intriguing, and he goes, it's never going to happen. But, little did he know. But he did.
Little did we know.
Whether he wanted it or not.
$4 billion came knocking. Who would say no?
Oh, okay.
Did you say billion? Yes.
With a B.
So he always said the original trilogy is about the kids, the prequels are about the parents, and the sequel trilogy would be about the grandkids. So for what that means for Kylo Ren, obviously, and Rey,
whatever is going on with her. Rian Johnson did say that her parenthood will be addressed in this movie.
Kenobi.
I don't think she's anybody.
Not explicitly, though. I don't think. I think he said it would be explored. Her origins.
What I'm referring to is not what he said during the panel. It was afterward. So it could have been. It may have been a wording that was similarly.
I just don't think that it's arbitrary that she's British.
I think
it's just.
Yeah,
I think
nothing's arbitrary. She's British. Kenobi was British. Well, the Star Wars version of British.
I've got other thoughts on that.
Then she could have done an American accent. There's a lot of British people in Star Wars.
Yeah, but why not do a British accent? Like, there's a lot of British people in Star Wars.
I don't think it's arbitrary.
Anyway,
I think I'm right.
It's very true that many things aren't arbitrary, but we'll see.
I've got thoughts on that agree with your opinion yet dispute it at the same time.
I like the first half of that sentence.
All right, wrapping up here.
Maggie was half right.
This is goodness gracious. We've talked for a longer time than we talked about Thor Ragnarok, and it feels like it flew by. Actually, one last note here about the themes that are playing. There's mixtures of themes happening here, and throughout a lot of the trailer. Rey's theme is throughout the trailer, and towards the end, it's mixed up with the Force theme, and that's just really cool. But overall, this teaser, it's to me, it's a great kind of piece to stand alongside the Force Awakens teaser. I feel like they both are comparable. I feel like they really identify the spirits of their own movies very distinctly, but in a similar way. I feel like the Force Awakens, it was more about urgency, adventure, and it was more light. Where this is more dark, it's more dramatic, and it's more emotional. So, closing thoughts, guys.
I feel everything and nothing. No, I'm very excited, and we say this all the time, that with these movies that we can sit here and rip our hair out and analyze and whatever, but they seem to surprise us. They surprise us every single time because there is so many different ways it can go, partially because of all the other extra stuff that's out there, extra media and books and all those, so we can analyze those. Are they going to use any of that, or are they just going to completely, and everything's valid. Like, it all could happen. So it's just, that's the level of excitement that leads. We're getting Star Wars movies again.
So, a lot we didn't see in this trailer. Snoke, Benicio del Toro's character. Obviously, questions to be answered. They've managed to make me not care about Rey's parentage. It's all I've thought about for the last 2 years. I don't care anymore. I want to know what happens to Luke Skywalker.
Right, it's less important.
How do they do that? Like,
they know.
Their
they know
game
what they want.
is as strong as ever at Lucasfilm, and kudos to Kathleen Kennedy for putting this team in place.
Absolutely.
Leia, we've got a very, very short glimpse. We didn't even get to see her face. Like, I need the next trailer. It's probably going to be August, so like, get me there somehow, guys. Yeah. The very dark tones of this, as we seen. The parallels, Attack of the Clones was very dark. Empire was very dark. Also, in this trilogy, it feels a lot like the original trilogy, where A New Hope, Empire, Jedi, they all had very distinct feels. So far, in just the 2 minutes we've seen of this, we can't judge it till we see the movie, this feels drastically different, yet being in the same trilogy from Force Awakens.
Yeah.
While mirroring, like you said, Seth, the original teaser we got for that.
Yes.
So there's just a lot floating in my head, and it's going to be a crazy few months here. Like, I mean, we've got some big stuff happening in the Geekiverse. Like, E3, back in my mind right now. Don't get it. So, from a lifelong, diehard Star Wars fan, thank you so much, Lucasfilm and Disney, for what you've done so far, and I can't wait to see what this entails this Christmas.
Hear, hear.
Merry Christmas to us, right? Right?
So, in the end, there's so much we don't know. It looks like it will be in the vein of Empire Strikes Back, but very much an evolution of the Force, evolution of Jedi, evolution of Star Wars itself. We can't wait to see what happens next. Be sure to follow the Geekiverse for all of our Episode 8 coverage. We'll have more stuff coming out as they keep rolling it out. And you guys, where can we find you guys on Twitter?
At MaggieWorth11.
I am at Josiah D. Leroy, and a quick plug, go listen to Walking Carpet on iTunes. It is our Star Wars podcast, and we had in Episode 20, our Episode 8 predictions.
Yes.
So
that's right.
Seth and I made some of those. Go check those out.
And a special mention of everybody's favorite generously girthed X-Wing pilot. It rhymes with Forkins.
Porkins!
I love him.
The guy who looks like Trevor. Yeah. And you can find me...
Overweight pilot number 1.
On Twitter, at Cap Amerikanski. You can follow the Geekiverse on Twitter, at @_Geekiverse. TheGeekiverse.com. Stay tuned because this is going to be a long 8 months ahead of us. 8 months to episode 8. How do you like that? 8 to 8. This is 828, the Geekiverse 828 special. Thank you very much for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. For Maggie, Josiah, I'm Seth, and we'll see you soon.